Shabbat Shalom and welcome to the World Alliance of Qara'im weekly Torah study. I'm Yaakov ben Yisrael, and today we will be reading through Parashath Mishpatim. Like I normally do, I will wait about 5 minutes for everyone to show up who might be coming, and then I will begin to read the parasha. But we are in Parashath Mishpatim, which is Exodus chapter 21, verse 1, and hopefully we'll read to 24, verse 18. Shabbat Shalom, Pamela, and thank you for joining us today. Shabbat Shalom, Eliyahu. Is the sound okay first? I don't know if anyone hears me. If you hear me okay, then just type 1 in the comments. And of course, there's a delay, so off here. So, okay. The sound is okay. All right. That is awesome. Hopefully everything will go off without a hitch today. I'm trying to update everything and get everything up and running at one time. Shabbat Shalom, Nicola, and welcome to the broadcast. Shabbat Shalom, Shaya. Glad you can join us today. I got a new tablet, and I'm trying to get everything backed up from my phone to my tablet. And I'm not very computer literate. All right. My goodness. Don't want Google tracking. All right. Yeah. So, anyway. Get off of there. Google tracking. I don't know what in the world's up with that thing. Okay, so I can turn it all off now. Okay, so today we are reading Parashath Mishpatim, and we will begin in Exodus chapter 21 with the verse first. Before I get started, I want to tell you guys about something. I don't know, you probably already know, but I had someone write me, Shabbat Shalom, James Bond 007. Welcome to the broadcast. Look, I had someone write to me and ask me my opinion of a Tanakh, and it's called a Reader's Hebrew Bible. I can't remember who puts this out. I think this is by Zondervan. Yeah, Zondervan Academic puts it out. It was put together by Philip Brown II and Brian W. Smith. Don't know who these guys are. But I bought the book. I bought the Tanakh. It is only around $60, I think. But what I find pretty cool about this is any word that's used 100 times or less in the Tanakh, they put them in footnotes at the bottom. And so you also have a small glossary in the back of the other words, which are not very many, that are used more than 100 times, I think. Anyway, the point of the Tanakh, this Reader's Hebrew Bible, is so that people who already have learned the basic Hebrew grammar and can read, and they pretty much know the difference between nouns, verbs, adjectives, and all those other cool things, then as they read, they don't have to always have a lexicon to look up the words that they might not know, because as you read through the Tanakh, especially when you're in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Tanakh, you can spend your life in the Torah, and you can pretty much learn all the words that are used in the Torah. There's only a few that are used once or twice, and those are usually those poetic words, and they're really hard to understand sometimes. Even for me, I've been reading this since I was in my early teens, and even today, because those words aren't used so often, you have to eventually look one or two up. And so what they've done is they've put all those in the footnotes so that you don't have to spend time looking them up. When you get to it, you just look down, it's all numbered. You look down at the footnotes and you see what it is. And so I recommend it. I'm not getting paid for advertising anything, and that's not what the point is. The point is I want people who already have learned how to read Hebrew and they understand the basic grammar to enjoy reading the Tanakh without having that burden of not knowing every single word. I don't care who you are or what kind of degree you might have or hold or whatever. Nobody knows every single word in the Tanakh. Eventually, you're going to have to look it up, especially once you get outside the Torah. Once you get outside the Torah, the more you read in the rest of the Tanakh, you're going to run across many more words that are never used in the Torah, and so you'll have to eventually consort a lexicon. So, with that being said, if you have any questions as I read, feel free to post those in the comments. If you've already read the parasha for this week, you can feel free to post any questions you have about it, even before we start reading. Just be aware that there's a delay. So I'm in the Streamyard studio. I'm streaming live to Facebook, to YouTube, and also to Periscope. That's new. I don't know what it is. I think it's post something on Twitter. Don't know. But there's a delay. So when you post in there, it might take a minute or two before it even shows up. So just be aware of that. I'm not ignoring anybody. That's just the situation. So let's begin. Chapter 21, verse 1. وَأَيْلَيْ HaMishpatim أَشْرْ تَسِيمْ لِفْنَيْهَمْ. And these are the Mishpatim. And the word Mishpat comes from Shafat, which means Mishpat means to judge, and a judge is called a Shofet. But The word mishpat can have a lot of other various meanings as well. It can mean even custom. And so basically he's saying these are the judgments that you shall set before them. Verse 2, Ki thiqne abed ivri sheish shanim ya'avod uvashiv'ith yetze lechofshi hinam. If you acquire, now this word qana to mean you can purchase it, you can trade, or you can even capture in war. That's a type of acquiring. However, you acquired this Hebrew slave, he shall serve you for 6 years. And in the 7th year, he shall go out free for nothing. Shabbat Shalom, fantastic Liz. Now, there's several ways we'll read about later in the Torah about how this Hebrew slave ends up in your possession. We know that the Torah explains to us that if our brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, and that's an interesting statement in itself, because it lets you know that women are also included in the term your brother. So it says if your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, becomes poor and sells themselves into servitude. So that is a type of acquiring, and that's more than likely the meaning here with the Hebrew servant. But we're told that we can't treat the Hebrew slave as, some other slave. It says he shall serve as someone who's hired. So, anyways, he serves for 6 years. The 7th year is the year of release. Every Hebrew slave goes free. They only serve for 7 years. And it says they go free for nothing. Hinam, which means they don't have to be redeemed or paid. Of course, they can be redeemed before the year of release. However, the reason why most Hebrew slaves would sell themselves into servitude, this is a form of indentured servitude. That means, in fact, this was a thing even at the time that the United States was in the colonial stage. A lot of Europeans, especially the poor Europeans, mainly the Irish or Germans, Scots, the Scandinavians, they would enter into a contract of indentured servitude, which basically means that they would work for whoever provides the capital or the money that they can come to the United States and actually purchase or acquire land. In those days, of course, the land, the colonial lands anyway, belonged to the various monarchies. And so you would normally go to a monarch and say, "Hey, I'll agree to serve you or work the land and give you whatever it is you require for so many amount of years, and then after that, I'll be free and the land will belong to me." So this is the same kind of concept in a way. The land is passed as an inheritance from father to son. Females don't normally inherit the land inheritance unless the father had no sons. In that case, the females would also receive the inheritance, but they had a stipulation, and that was that they were required to marry amongst the paternal tribe. That means if you had women from the tribe of Reuben, They would not be allowed to marry amongst the tribe of Zebulun, for instance. If they wanted to keep or have the paternal um, inheritance of their fathers, then they would have to actually be married to members of that paternal tribe. Shabbat Shalom, Rich. Thank you for joining us today. And so, if he ends up making a bad decision and he's indebted to someone, has to pay it back, of course, he sells himself into servitude. The person would actually pay the debts for him, and then he was required to work for however many years. But he couldn't. It couldn't last any more than 7 years. So in the 7th year, he goes out free. He doesn't have to pay his debts are done. Verse 3. Im bigapo yavo bigapo yitze. Im ba'al ishahu wa yatsa'a ishto imo. Now it says, if he comes with his own person, then with his own person he will go out. That means if he comes just himself, then he'll leave by himself. However, if he im ba'al isha, which is translated in the politically correct times of today as if he's the husband of a woman. Literally, this means ba'al isha, means the owner of a woman, which is what the husband was in those days. The woman belonged to the husband. Then she will go out, or his wife will go out with him. Verse 4. Im Adonau yiteno isha wa yalada lo vanim o vanoth. Ha'isha wiladeha tihye ladoneha. Wahu yitze begafo. So if his master, now I want you to look at, if you follow me in this is Exodus chapter 21, verse 4. It says, Im Adonau. There's always questions about the plurality of certain words in the Tanakh. We see this in Elohim. Many people seem to think because it's a plural noun, Elohim, that, it must be a plurality of gods, and that's simply not the case. We see this word Adonau, which is actually the plural Adonim, with the masculine pronominal suffix, and it literally means if his masters, would be literal, gave to him a wife, and she gives birth to sons or daughters to him, the wife and her children shall belong to his master. This is plural again. And so the plurality here, we see this with Abraham. We see this when the servant of Abraham was told to put his hand under his master's thigh and take an oath. It says under the thigh of Adonai, his masters, which is plural. We see it in the case of Yosef, who was in the house of his master. This is also in the plural. And we see it many times used throughout the Tanakh, where the plural is used as an address of formality, normally with someone who is either unknown to you or in a position higher than yourself. Then they're normally used in the plural. Not always, but that's a normal custom. And so plurality doesn't always mean plurality of person. It only signifies a position of respect. And that's certainly the case with God. So if she has sons or daughters, then the children and the woman will belong to his master, and he will go out alone. So he came alone. His master gave him a wife, and his wife has children. Then she is still the property of her master. which would be the man that he sold himself to. Now, it seems really unfair, but there's many ways you can look at it. First of all, if you sell yourself into servitude, you end up with a wife that was given to you by the man you're serving, and you do a good job. Let's say you work like crazy, you do a really good job, and he decides, okay, she can go free. You have to understand, regardless if you marry the woman, she is still the property of the person that owns her. And at this time, it was the master that you're serving. So unless you pay for this woman to be free, you can't take her, because then you'll be stealing the property of this man. And so, incidentally, her children, because you wouldn't split the children and say, well, half of that child belongs to me, the child would stay with the mother, and the property rights of that man would outweigh the rights of the father over the son here in this case. But there's ways to get around it. You can, like I said, you can purchase the woman and you can purchase the children, because they were the property of this man when you went to serve him. And then you can take them with you and wouldn't be considered stealing. Or the master can gift the children. It could be a really decent guy and say, oh, take them with you. However, if none of those happen and the man still doesn't want to go, you're not allowed to steal the woman and the child. So in the case that he won't sell or he won't gift these to you, the only other possibility is what we're about to read in verse 5. وَإِمْ أَمَرْ يَمَرْ حَعَبِدْ أَحَبْتِ et Adoni. Let you know that the Adonav is actually singular. Adoni is now singular, my master. Et ishti wa et banai lo et chofshi. So if the servant says, and this is in the emphatic form again, I love my master, and I love my wife and my children, I will not go out free. Okay? Verse 6, وَهِكِشَوْ أَدْنَاv إِلْهَا Elohim, وَهِكِشَوْ إِلْهَا دَالَث أو إِلْهَا مَزُوزَةً وَرَتْسَى أَدْنَاv et أُزْنُو بِمَرْسَيَةٍ وَعَبَدُهُ لَعُلَانٍ. Then his master, again in the plural, shall bring him near to Elohim. Now, Elohim also has not only the meaning of God, but of judge. And in many cases, that would be the primary meaning of Elohim, and not God as we think of God today. And of course, Elohim is in the plural, but this still means the judge or the judges. And we'll find out why in just a few minutes. So his master shall bring him to the judges and bring him near to the door or to a doorpost, and his master will pierce his ear with a piercing tool, and he will serve him forever. Okay, so that's the only other option that you will really have in the case that the master doesn't sell you the woman and children and doesn't allow them to go free. Then you can decide, okay, well, now I'll serve him forever. And so this is the only instance that I'm aware of, or that I can remember offhand, where a Hebrew becomes an eternal slave. And that's because of the love of his wife and children. Other than that, you'd have to let him go in the 7th year. Verse 7, וכי ימכור איש את ביתו לאמה, לא תצא כצאת abedin. And if a man will sell his daughter as a female servant, then she will not go out as the slaves would go out, or the male slaves. Verse 8. Im ra'a bi'ayne ha'adoneha asher lo ya'da wa hifda la'am nokhri lo yamshol limokhra bi vigdova. And so if ra'a, which means she is bad, not necessarily evil. I spoke about this same word during this week. Ra means bad. Of course, we have evil as well, but the idea of evil, as we think about it today in modern terms, doesn't exist in the Tanakh. I know a lot of people will disagree with me, but that's okay. Disagree all you want. This word ra is always the exact opposite of tov. We have a word tov, which means good, it means wholesome, it means great, it means something that's beneficial. Okay? But then we have the word ra, which is always the exact opposite. But because it's ra, does not necessarily mean that it's wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's unjust. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a violation of the Torah. In fact, when you implement punishment, which is a just punishment because of crimes, that's also considered a ra. So it can't mean that it's evil the way we think of it today. Yeah, it's tough, it's bad, people being punished, especially by death, that's a bad thing. People dying, but it's still just in certain cases. The murderer is to be put to death. Okay, and yeah, that's a bad thing to put someone to death, but it's still just. There's still justice. In fact, we see, for instance, the angel that was sent when King David made the census, and it said that it angered God, and so he sent this angel. Well, actually, he gave David the choice of punishment. He said, "How would you like to be punished? By the hands of your enemy, or by a plague, or by the hands of God?" And he said, "I would rather do it by the hands of God, because you are a merciful God, after all, and not by the enemy, who would be cruel anyway." And so, as a punishment, the angel was sent out to kill the Israelites because of the crime of David, and said that the angel went through and was killing the people, and David begged and pleaded and said, the sin is mine, and so forth. And God had compassion. So, okay, David realized that his actions have direct consequences on the people. Then he told the angel, "That's enough." And in that instance where he says that he told the angel that that's enough, it says that he repented from the evil that he had intended to do. And this is this word ara. So even God, in the fulfillment of justice on a people, he does things that are considered ara. And if we always understand that as evil, then that's incorrect. The idea of evil that we have today is not the same as what we see with this word ara in the Tanakh. Okay. All that just to say that if she does something bad, or she's not pleasing or whatever in the eyes of her master, also plural, Adoneha, who appointed her for him. Okay. And that could be as a wife or just simply as a servant. Then he has to redeem her. Well, hifdah, he has to redeem her. He is not, he has no authority. So it says lo yimshol. Yimshol comes from mashal, which means to be in authority, to rule. A moshel is can be also a king. In fact, one of the so-called messianic prophecies of Beit Lechem Yehuda is that they were one of the smallest of the um, cities or whatever of all the tribes of Israel. But from you comes the Moshel, who will be the leader of my people. So it basically says he doesn't have any authority. Limokra, to sell her. And this is an interesting phrase. It says, which means because of his treachery with her. What that actually means, we don't really know. It's not clearly stated. There's some guesses as to it, but we're not exactly sure. But whatever it was, he's not allowed to sell her. He has to actually redeem her, which means he has to pay her debt so that she can go free. Verse 9. وَإِمْ لِبْنُو يَعْدَنَّا كَمِشْپَاتْ habanot يَعْسَلَهُ. And if to his son he appointed her, if he uh, designated her for his son, then according to the mishpat of the daughters, he shall do to her, which means she'll no longer be considered a slave, but a daughter for his son. That's that word mishpat again, mishpat habanot. So it's not always judgment, but it could be according to the custom of the daughters. Verse 10. Im acheret yikach lo she'irah sutha wa onatha lo yigra. And if he takes for himself another, this word is acheret, which means naturally another woman. She'irah sutha wa onatha lo yigra. Now it means her she'irah. Now she'irah is an interesting word, and usually it's translated to mean her food. But she'irah can also mean what if he does take another wife, then what belongs to her or what remains for her can't be diminished. Of course, that would be talking about anything that she would need in her daily life, not only food. Kesutha, which is naturally her clothing, which can also be considered her house. A woman is also covered by her house. And her onatha. Now, ona literally means when we see this in the Tanakh, a woman who has had this happen is talking about sex, and so they say this is her right to sex. That means he can't, if women want to have sex, and they certainly have those desires. He's still her husband. She's not allowed to go sleep around. Then he has to fulfill her sexual needs as well. He can't deny that to her. And it says lo yigra, which means it shall not diminish. This is the same word used when we talk about the Torah, when it says do not add to the Torah and do not diminish anything from it. The same verb here. Verse 11. وَإِمْ شِلوش إِلَى لو يَعْسِلَهُ وَيَتْأَهِنَامْ إِنْ كَاسِفْ. And so, if he cannot do these three for her, talking about her needs as far as her daily requirements, her clothing and housing, as well as her sexual desires, then she will go out for nothing without any money. Verse 12. Makeish v'meis, both the one who strikes a man and he die, he shall certainly be put to death. Both dumah, and this is also an emphatic form. So it says anyone who strikes a man, makke, which is the particular participle of nakah. So anyone striking a man that he die, he shall be put to death. Verse 13. وأشر له صدى وإلهيم إمنا ليدو والسمت لخ مقام أشر ينوث شمنا. And وأشر, and that did not صدى, which means literally means to hunt him or to lie in wait for him. But Elohim, God now, Inna Liado, which means he brought him to his hand, which this is where you get the idea of it's an act of God. And we see that what he's talking about later in the Tanakh when it talks about the incident, and he actually describes what this means later in the Torah. And they give you a case. Okay, let's say that there's two people. They're in the forest. They're cutting wood, and the axe head comes off the axe while he's swinging the axe, and it says it finds the head of someone there. That would be an act of God, right? And it says if it strikes him and he dies, then he can flee to the city of refuge, and the Redeemer of Blood, which is usually translated as the Avenger of Blood, but that's not actually what it means. It's Goel Hadam. Goel means Redeemer. So the one redeeming the blood of the dead person, he's actually has all rights to kill this man for killing his neighbor, and because of that, God has set these different cities of refuge throughout the land of Israel, so that it would be possible for him to flee and get there before the family members come and kill him for killing one of their family members. Once he reaches the city of refuge, the Goel Hadam is not allowed to kill him. You can't kill him, but he can call for an inspection. So in that case, it says that the priest shall take him and he'll go to the court of the Kohanim, and they'll make investigation to find out, did he hate this guy? Did he know him? Did they have problems? And so forth. And it says they'll do a thorough search and make sure that this guy killed him. It was indeed an accident. It wasn't out of malice. He wasn't lying in wait to kill this guy. And if that was the case, then he would be confined to the city of refuge in his tribal area, wherever it was he fled to, until the death of the Kohen Gadol. So it's almost like a early form of prison. He wasn't allowed to leave outside of that city of refuge. If he did leave outside the city of refuge, then if the Redeemer caught him, he could kill him. However, at the end of his sentence to this type of prison, when the Kohen Gadol died, then he's allowed to go home. He's allowed to go free. And, it sounds kind of funny, but if the Kohen Gadol happened to die the next day after the court case, he's still allowed to go home. He couldn't be touched. And so that's what we're about to see. وعاشر له الصداع وهلم هنا ليدو And so if he didn't lie in wait for him, but God had brought him under his power, and then I shall appoint for you a place where he shall flee. 14. وَخِي يزيد إيش على رعيه لحرقه بعرمان معيم مذبحي تقتحل لموت. However, if a man acts insolently with intention, this word yazid is also used in Deuteronomy 17, where it talks about the ruling of the court of the Kohanim. If there's a controversy or a matter of dispute amongst the Israelite magistrates in their local areas, and those local judges can't decide the case, it's too hard. They take that case before the court of the Kohanim, and they'll decide the case for you, for those local magistrates. And it says whatever they explain to the people, they have to keep that. That's the only time we have where we have jurisprudence made and ruled that everyone would have to obey, and it's only in the case that this goes before that court. Otherwise, the local magistrates are allowed to decide for themselves. But anyways, it says that when these judges make that proclamation and they explain the rules to the people, what they should do, it says they shall not go to the right or the left. They shall hold on to exactly to what the judges say. And it's in the plural, it's not just one person making the judgment, it's they, what they shall tell you and what they shall explain. And how they instruct you, you shall not leave off to the right or to the left. And any person who acts yazid here with insolence, which means you do it deliberately, then they'll be put to death. So it says, so any man who acts deliberately or with insolence against his neighbor to kill him with orma. Orma means with treachery. Okay. Then you shall take him from my altar to be put to death. And that's actually interesting because this is talking also about this case. If the person flees to that city of refuge, he's taken before the court to adjudicate this matter. Did he commit murder or not? And a part of the regulation of Deuteronomy chapter 17 is that it says you shall go to the Kohanim and to the Kohen who shall be standing and officiating in those days, meaning in the days that this matter comes before the court, that Kohen Gadol will adjudicate the case. And it has to be done from the place where God chose to set his name. So this lets you know that's where the altar is. So wherever that altar was, that's where the person was taken. And so if it's found out that he has indeed committed murder, then he should be taken from that place, from that altar, and be put to death. Verse 15. Umakei aviv wa immo mothima. Anyone who strikes his father or his mother shall be put to death. I think that's pretty clear. We shouldn't take a whole lot of time on that one. Verse 16. ונוגב איש ומחרו ונמצא בידו מות יומת. And so now this word nagav means to steal. And in fact, we read about it first when it says in the commandments, lo tekanav, you shall not steal. Right? So nochev here is the participle form, which means he's someone who steals a man. So this is when nochev ish. And so if you steal a man and you sell him, if he's found in his hands, then he shall be put to death. It's actually yeah. This seems kind of funny because you have this about the this is normally talking about someone who steals a person to sell them. Usually it's talking about selling them into slavery. It says if he's found in his hands, then that person will be put to death, the person who stole that man. And it seems kind of strange that it's out of place here, because we talk about the theft here later on in this parasha. I thought it was right here, but it's not. Anyway, the next verse is Makalel Aviv wa Immo Motimat. Not only are you not allowed to strike your mother and your father, but you're also not allowed to belittle them. Now, this usually means to curse, and is also equated with la'or, which means to curse. Here it's talking about to belittle them. You don't have to really say curse them, even by insulting them. It says you should be put to death. Verse 18. וכי יריבון אנשים וחיכה איש את רעהו באבן או באגרוף ולא ימות ונפל למשכב. So if men are striving, yarivun, I had a question this week about the nature of the word Satan. Satan usually is translated as an adversary. Sitna is used in both the book of Genesis as well as in the book of Ezra. And Sitna just has to do with making a complaint or making a legal challenge. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a legal challenge. Of course, you can any type of challenging rights would fall in this understanding of Sitna. But the point is, in Genesis, when we first see the word Sitna, the first time we even see the word, the verb Lisbon, or where we get the word Satan, that verb is equated with the word Riv. Okay, and it says, and they disputed with him. And so here we have the same word. If men strive, and this could be in a legal matter, which is what we're talking about in chapter 7 of Deuteronomy. It says, and if there's a matter of controversy, okay, and this is the word riv, right? So if they're striving, if they have a controversy, and a man strikes his neighbor with a stone or with his fist, and he does not die, but he falls in bed. He falls upon or in the bed. He can't move around. Verse 19. אם יקום והתהלך בחוץ על משענתו וניקח המכה רק שבטו ייתן ורפו ירפא. So if he stands up and he walks around outside And it says al mishanto. Mishanto is something used to support yourself. They usually talk about it being a cane or a staff or whatever it is. It doesn't make a difference. It means whatever you use to support yourself with. Then the one who struck him will be innocent. Okay, only his sitting he shall return, and he shall certainly make sure the man is brought back to health. That means that if you strike a man during this controversy and you don't kill him, then you're not going to be liable for death. All right. However, if you hurt this guy, you injure him, you're still liable for his injury. If he's not able to work, lying in bed, you have to cover the cost of what he would lose if he's not able to go to work, and so forth, and also the cost of the medical, whatever he needs as far as medicine or a doctor or what have you. You have to pay that. And so that's the end of the first aliyah, and now we begin the second aliyah in verse 20. So for everyone who joined us, we are in Exodus chapter 21. We're starting verse 20. וכי יכה איש את עבדו או את אמתו בשבט ומת תחת ידו, נקום ינקה. So if a man strikes his male servant, Avdo, or his female servant, Amatho, this is Evid or Amma, with a shavet. Shavet is a staff, also is used for a tribe. Same thing with Mate, means tribe or it means a staff. So if any man strikes his male or female servant with a staff and he dies under his hand, which means he dies as a result of that strike, then he shall certainly be avenged, or nakom yin nakaim, which literally means I don't know really how to put it. Vengeance doesn't mean because you have revenge and you have vengeance. Actually, this is talking about justice, which means he would actually be put to death if he causes the death of a slave, whether it's a male or female. And I say that because God is just. He works on the scale and measure of justice. When we think about revenge today, revenge is usually going further than what the law actually allows you to do. Whereas to avenge maybe would be actually enacting the legal response or enacting the legal justice that should be meted out. Verse 21, im yom o yomayim ya'amod lo yuqam ki kaspohu. However, if he walks around for a day or two, then he shall not be avenged because he is indeed his property. So that means if the guy happened to live for a few days after being beaten and he died, then he shouldn't. I won't even say that. I'm not saying he died here. It says im yom o yomam yamod, but however he walks around a few days, even if he has been struck with the staff, then the master of the slave won't be avenged because he is his money. Literally is what it says, but it's talking about being his property. Verse 22, وَخِي يِنَّسُوا أَنَشِيم وَنَغَفُوا إِيشَ هَرَا وَيَتْسُوا يَلَدَيْهَا وَلَوْ يِهِي أَسَوْن عَنُوش يَعْنِيش كَأَشَرْ يَسِيت عَلَى بَعَل هَإِشَا وَنَثَانَ بِفَلِلِينَ. And so if men fight, if they're actually fighting, this isn't really a legal dispute, but they're having a quarrel, and they come near to a pregnant woman, and her child comes out as a result. Meaning, basically, she has either premature birth or an abortion, or a miscarriage, not necessarily an abortion. If there's no harm, وَلَوْ يِهِي أَسَوْن. This word ason is used in the book of Genesis when it talks about Benjamin. Of course, Joseph, as a test, he tells his brothers, all right, if you're telling the truth, then bring your youngest brother here so that I can set my eyes upon him and see that you guys are truthful and just and not spies. When they go back and talk to their father, his father said, hey, I don't want to send Benjamin. His brother's already dead. And this is all I have left of the mother, who is also dead. I don't want to send him with you, lest Ason happen to him along the way. And so the idea here is usually either some kind of harm, something bad happens, or even death. So if there's, and I personally, I think this is talking about death. Of course, that's not always directly implied. I personally think this is talking about death. If the child dies, then he shall be punished according to what the husband of the wife shall lay upon him. Okay? And then he will be given over into judgment. Pelelim, which means, this is where you get the word hitpalel, which actually means to pray, but here the palal means, pilel means to judge. So he'll be handed over to judgment. Actually, the ason here would actually not mean death, because we see that in the very next verse. Im ason, if there is death. No, I was right. That was right. Well, lo yihi ason, if there is no ason, then he shall be punished. Here we see that it is talking about death or so. Or actually, it could be any of the other ones too, because it says, "Well, im ason yihye." If there is happen to be ason, when nefesh tahat nefesh, you shall give then life instead of life. But then we have also in verse 24, which lets you know it doesn't necessarily have to be death. So I guess I was actually wrong thinking that was specifically death. Verse 24 says, Ayin tahat ayin. Eye instead of an eye. Shein tahat shein. A tooth instead of a tooth. Yad tahat yad. A hand instead of a hand. Regel tahat regel. A foot instead of a foot. Verse 25. Kawiya tahat kawiya, which is talking about a burning, or it could be a branding instead of branding. Pesa tahat pasa. Pesa is a bruise or any type of wound, and then we have chabura, which is specifically bruise. Chabura tahat chabura, or bruise or bruise. So I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be death. And there's also debate whether this is to be taken literally. Do if the child comes out missing teeth, which I don't know many children that are born with teeth, maybe, I don't know. Do you actually pull out the teeth of the man? Seems a little extreme. Verse 26. וכי יכה איש את עין עבדו או את עין עמתו ושיחתה לחופשי ישלחנו תחת עינו. So here we have an answer to the question about the slave. Not necessarily in the case of the unborn child, but here in the case of the slave, it says, and if a man strikes his male servant or the eye of his female servant, and it is destroyed, or he destroys it, I'm talking about the eye, then he shall go away free, or he shall be sent away free in place of his eye, or because of the eye. وإم شين عبدو أو شين أمثو يبيل لحوفشي يشلهن تحت شنو. And if it's the tooth of his male servant or the tooth of his female servant, which is caused to fall out, then he shall send him away free in place of his tooth. So it doesn't necessarily mean literally. In the case of the slave, then he's granted his freedom because of the injury received. Verse 28. וכי גח שור את איש או את אישה ומת, סקול יסכל השור ולא יאכל את בשרו, ובעל השור נקי. Says if a ox gores a man or a woman and they die, the man or woman dies, then the ox will be stoned, but its flesh shall not be eaten. And the owner of the ox, now here we have the idea of a Baal, meaning an owner. We talked about the Baal Ish, which literally means the owner of a woman. It's often translated as husband. But here we have a Baal Hashor, so you definitely can't translate the Baal Hashor as the husband of the ox, right? So the actual meaning of the word Baal here is the owner. So if this ox kills a man or a woman, it'll be stoned. Its flesh will not be eaten. However, the owner of the ox shall be naqi, which means he shall be innocent of doing any wrong. Verse 29. وَإِمْ شُورْ نَبْجَحْهُ مِثْمَلْ شِلْشُوم وَحُوْ عَلْ بِفْعَلَوْ وَلَوْ يشمرن وحميت إيش أو إشاء حشور يسخيل وغم بعلاو يماث. If a ox gores or had gored, if the ox had gored before times, and its master was informed, and he didn't take precautions, and a man or a woman were killed, then the ox shall be stoned, and also its owner shall be put to death. So this lets you know that you're liable for the death, even if it's not at your own hand. Okay? So this is an interesting concept. We see later that if we have on the roof of our homes, we're to put this barricade to prevent someone from falling off and dying. So you're held liable for that death also. And here we have an animal that the owner already knew that it would gore and has also done it before. If he doesn't take precaution and make sure that this animal didn't do it and it does it again, then he's to be put to death. Verse 30, Im kofer yushat alav. And here again we have a kofer, which is talking about a restitution. It's a covering, literally, which means you cover, for instance, like the debt that you owe, you cover the debt. When we talk about paying, today we use money. We say, I'll cover the cost. And it's the same idea here. If it says if a covering is set upon him, talking about the liability of the death. ונתן פדיון נפשו ככל אשר יושת עליו, then he shall give as a pidyon. Pidyon means a ransom, literally, for his life, according to all that is set upon him. Which means, basically, if they don't want to kill the man, they whatever's set on him, he can be put in slavery, or he can pay monetary value. Whatever's set upon him, that's what he will give as a ransom for his own life. Verse 31. O vein yigah o vat yigah kamishpat hazeh ye'aseh lo. And if it's a son or a daughter that is that it gores and kills, then according to the same judgment shall be done for him. Verse 32. Im abed yigah hashor o ama kesef shiloshim shekalim yitain le'adonah v'hashor yisaqel. However, if it's a male or female slave that is gored, then 30 pieces of, or 30 weights or measures of silver shall be given to his master, to the one that owned the slave, whether it's a male or female. And the ox is then stoned, put to death. Verse 33. وكي يفتح إيش بور أو كي يخري أو كي يخري إيش بور ولو يخسنه ونفل شام شور أو خمور. So if a man opens a well, or if a man digs a well and doesn't cover it, and an ox or an ass falls therein. 34. Ba'al habor yishalem kesef v'yeshiv liba'alav v'hamet yihyelo. Then the one who owns this, now we know again, this is the owner of the well, because it says Ba'al habor. So this is not the husband of the well. He shall repay the monetary value. It shall be returned to the owner of the oxen or the ass. And the dead, whatever it is dead, it shall belong to the owner. That means if you cause the death of my property, my livestock, because of your negligence, then you get to keep the dead thing, and you're going to pay me the monetary value And so here we have this idea of Yishalem. Shalem means to repay also, to restitute. It comes from the same root, shalom, which means literally the shalom, which means to enact peace or to have peace. It can the shalem means to actually recompense, to repay, or to make restitution. Verse 35. וכי יגוף שור איש או איש את שורעהו ומת, ומכרו את השור החי, וחצו את כספו, וגם את המת יחסון. So now we have a case. If the ox So if one man's ox basically injures and kills the oxen of his neighbor, or injures it that it dies, then they shall sell the ox that lives, which means the living ox of his neighbor, shall be sold, and they shall divide its money, as well as the dead ox, the one that was killed, they shall divide its meat. Verse 36. O nodha kishor nigah hu mitmol shilshom walo yishmerenu ba'ala shalem yishalem shor tahat shor wahamed yihelo. And however, if it was known that the ox had done this before, he's gored before, and its owner, its Baal, did not take precautions, he didn't take care, then he shall certainly repay ox under ox, or basically ox for ox, meaning he'll have to give a living ox in place of the dead ox, and the dead one will belong to him. Verse 37. Ki yighnov ish shor osei utivahu o mecharo hamisha bachar yishalem tahat hashor wa arba ason tahat hasei. If any man shall steal an ox or a sheep or a goat, this is a say, which is basically the young, and to the hoe, which means to slaughter him, or sells him. Hamisha Bachar, then 5 from the herd. This is normally understood to be of the cows. He shall repay instead of the ox, and 4 of the herd or sheep or goats instead of the say. So that's what happens if you steal. Now we're in chapter 22, verse 1, for those who are joining me now. So verse 1. Im bam mahtereth yimatzeh hanagav wa hukah wa meit ein lo damim. Now, if in the act of breaking in, or in the process of the theft, so if the thief is found in the act of stealing, and he was struck and died, then there will be no penalty of blood. It says, Ain lo damim. So he won't, is it basically literally it says there will be no blood for him, which means if the thief is killed in the process, then that's not going to be considered murder, nor would he be liable for the death penalty. Verse 2, Im zarha hashemesh alav damim lo. Shalem yishalem im ein lo wa nimchar b'gnevatho. If the sun shines upon him, then there will be a requirement of blood. So the verse preceding would be then that if the burglary happens in the night, that would be the logical conclusion, because if it happens during the day, then if the person is killed, then he would have the person who killed him would then be liable for blood. Shalem yishalem im ein lo wa nimchar b'gnevatho. And so he would definitely repay. However, if he doesn't have anything, then he will be sold because of his theft. So that means the person could be sold into slavery if he doesn't have anything to repay what he stole. Verse 3, Im himatse tematse biyado hageneva mishur ad hamor ad se hayim shenayim yishalem. If you happen to find in his possession the thing that was stolen, the stolen property, either an ox to an ass to a say, which is the young of the sheep or the goat, and it's alive, he will repay twice. And that is the end of the second aliyah, and we'll begin the third at verse 4. So this is chapter 22, and we're on verse 4 for those who might be joining now. Verse 4. Ki yav'ir ish sadeh o cherem v'shilach et ba'iro uvi'ir b'sadeh acher meitav sadehu umeitav karmo yishalem. Now, this is interesting what it says. It says, if yav'ir ish sadeh o cherem. Now, of course, most translations will translate this as to be grazed over. So if a man causes a field or a vineyard to be grazed by cattle, and he sends his ba'iro means the beast of burden, then the one who sent him, bi'ir, this is interesting because we see this often with fire, has to be consumed. And meaning he sent him out to continue grazing in a field, in another field, the goods of that field and the goods of that vineyard he shall repay. So whatever this beast happens to eat or destroy in the vineyard or the field, then that person who owns that beast has to repay it. Verse 5, כי תצא אש ומצאה קוצים ונאכל גדיש או הקמה או השדה שלם ישלם המבעיר את הבעירה. And this is why I want to talk about this word. So if a fire goes out and finds the kotzim, which happens to be the thorn. This is from the word kotz. We see that in the curse of the ground. So if it finds thorns and the sheaves or the stacks are consumed, or the standing grain or the field itself, then the one who sets the fire, Hamavir, this is the Hifil, shall repay et Habba'ira, which means Ba'ira means the burning. Now, here's what I find interesting. Now, I'm probably going to get a lot of comments later about it, but I don't care. This is just what I see. We see, of course, talking about theft, and then prior to that, we talk about the destruction of property by means of cattle. And here we have a verse right above another verse talking about fire, right? And so it says here, if fire goes out and finds thorns or and consumes the sheaves or the standing grains or the field itself, then the person who sets the fire, hamavir, this is the PL form. Bi'er means to continue something. Here is the mavir, the one who actually started it to burn. Right? Then he has to pay for his ba'ira. Notice where the ba'ira is written with a seri, ba'ira. Now we have ba'iro, which would be ba'ir also. And of course, if we want to claim it that way, then of course the ba'ir here would have to be written in the feminine, which would be ba'iratho. But it's just interesting that we talk about Yav'er Ish. So that's also could be, that's not could be, it is actually in Hifil, which means if a man cause a field to be burnt or a vineyard, then and he sends the fire and or he sets the fire and he causes another field to burn and be aired, then whatever was destroyed in that field. And so it could be argued, actually, that it's talking about, instead of sending out an ox, that it's actually talking about setting the fire. But anyway, that's a matter of grammar. Verse 6, כי ייתן איש אל רעהו כסף או חיילים לשמור וגונב בבית האיש אם ימצא הגנב ישלם שניים. So if a man gives to his neighbor money, silver, or chelim, any articles, to safeguard, and it is stolen from the house of the man, meaning if it is stolen from the house of the man that his neighbor was given the articles or money to safeguard. If that which is stolen is found, so if the thief, the ganaf, if the thief is found, then he shall pay double. Oh, we got somebody poked in here. I don't know if I should let this guy in or not. Shalom, Melech.
Yo, shalom.
Don't hear you. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I hear you fine. You don't hear me? 1 second. You hear me now?
Anyways, if the thief is found, then he shall pay double.
Do you hear me now?
Nope, can't hear you now.
You don't hear me?
Can't hear.
Then how are you able to say? Weird. I don't know why.
So, if the thief is found, then he shall pay double. Verse 7, Imlo yimtsih hakanav ونقرب بعض حبايت إلى إلهيم إملو شلح يدو بملخت رعيه. And so if the thief is not found, then the master of the house shall be brought to Elohim. This is what I was talking about earlier. He shall be brought to the judges. Elohim here means the judges, to see if he did not set his hand against his neighbor's property. This is Malacha, which means his work, literally. Verse 8, Al-Khul Devar Pesha, Al-Shor, Al-Hamor, Al-Se, Al-Simla, Al-Khul Aveda, Asher Yomar, Ki Huze, Ad Ha-Elohim Yavo Devar Shanayim, Asher Yarshi'un Elohim, Yishallim Shanayim L'Ra'ihu. Now here's how we prove absolutely this is talking about the judges and not Elohim, God. Verse 8 says, for every matter of pesha, which means a transgression, whether it's in the matter of an ox or an ass or a say, which is the young goat or sheep, or salama, which is salama is a cloak or a mantle or anything that's lost, which he shall say it is his, it belongs to him. Then to the judges, that the matter of the two shall be brought, and the one that the judges make guilty, Yarashi'un, then he will pay back twice to his neighbor. Shalom, Ella.
Shalom. Can you hear me now?
I still don't hear you.
I think it's on your side. I don't know. It says the mic is there.
It could be on my side. I don't know.
I think so.
As long as you hear me, then I know the audience hears me, but I don't know. If you guys in the audience can hear Melech, just type a 1. If you don't hear Melech, type 2. Because we're having a little bit of problems with Mike. All right, Melech, can you?
I can hear you.
Okay, now I can hear you. That was on my side.
It was on your side.
Yeah. Hello, man. Where you been the last 2 or 3 weeks?
Well, if you'd still been able to communicate with me on WhatsApp, you would know that I was studying for final exams.
Are you through with the final exam?
My last one was yesterday. I'm done.
Hopefully you did well.
Yeah, I did well enough.
Oh, you already got the results.
For some of them, yeah.
Uh-huh.
There were some. They were pretty tough. It's not like in the United States where the grades are just like given away for free. You really have to work your ass off to get good grades here. So there's no grade inflation here, and it requires a lot of work.
All right. So we are in Exodus chapter 22.
Great. I would like to start off by refuting your ridiculous argument about fire on Shabbat.
All right.
So there are a number of, just very briefly, there are a number of proofs, and one of my main proofs is that fire regarding Shabbat is not mentioned anywhere else except Exodus 35:3, maybe one other place. I don't even think it's mentioned any other place in the Torah at all. And when you have the various prophets complaining about violation of the Shabbat, for instance, in Jeremiah, 16 or 17, maybe 18, I can't remember now. He doesn't complain about people lighting fires on Shabbat. What does he complain about? He complains about people bringing loads into the city. When you have Nehemiah complaining about violation of the Shabbat by the Israelites, he doesn't complain about fire being violated. He complains again about loads being brought into the city, about work being done. So there's no indication anywhere whatsoever that there's any problem with fire. None of the people who complain about violation of the Shabbat anywhere else in the entire Tanakh ever complain about the violation of having to do with fire. In fact, the only thing that we even see that's even closely connected with the prohibition of fire on Shabbat is the Mikoshesh Ha'etzim, the gatherer of the sticks. And he's not punished for lighting a fire on Shabbat. He's punished for doing melacha, for doing work that's associated with lighting a fire on Shabbat. So I would claim, and I would posit that there is no actual prohibition on lighting fire on Shabbat. That it's just an example that's given of a primary type of melacha that would have been done on Shabbat because it's such a basic thing, and yet it requires so much work. That and food preparation are really the two big things that people would require on a Shabbat. So, and food preparation is also mentioned explicitly in the case of I believe it's Passover. I believe it's Hakham Melech, that it says that you're not supposed to do malechet avodah. You're not supposed to do any work, with the exception of food preparation, which implies that on days like the Shabbat, you're not even allowed to do food preparation. So those are the two basic things that would be required on any day when someone's taking the day off. Would be food preparation and keeping the fire going, keeping that or having a source of fire. And we don't see any indication anywhere in the entire Tanakh, aside from the statement in Exodus 35:3, that there's any prohibition on Shabbat about fire. If Jeremiah was so upset about violation of Shabbat, he would have mentioned fires being lit. He would have mentioned fires being lit, especially since we know that a lot of these people were sacrificing to their gods, and that involves lighting fires on the Shabbat. But that's even a side point. The point is, we don't see any indication anywhere in the Tanakh that I can think of that there's any problem that any of the prophets anywhere have with the actual act of lighting a fire on Shabbat, unless it's connected with actual milacha, as in the case of the Mikoshesh Ha'etzim.
Okay. So we are in chapter 22 of Exodus, and we are actually on verse 8.
Exodus 22:8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on a second.
And so, as I was stating earlier, this is how we know that Elohim, when it talks about bringing the slave to the Elohim, it pierces the ear. This is not speaking about God, is speaking about the judges, which is also one of the meanings of Elohim. Here, the two will bring the complaint about the stolen goods to Elohim, and it says Asher Yarshi'un Elohim. And so Yarshi'un, which means to make guilty of the violation, of the transgression. So the subject here is Elohim, and so this is in the plural. And so
One
let you
second.
know
Let me open
that
up. So we're in Exodus 22,
verse 8.
9, you said, right? Hello.
You hear me now?
Yeah. That was my fault that time. All right, hold on a second. We're in Exodus 22:9, you said, right?
No, I just read 8.
So okay. 1 second. Exodus 22:8. Yeah. אם לא ימצא הגנב ונקרב בעל הבית אלא אלוהים, אם לא שלח ידו במלאכת רעהו. So, right.
That was 7.
Let me think about this for a second. Well, I'm not so sure that Elohim means judges. We know that the top judge sits in the place where basically sits where God's presence is. So that might be a euphemism. That might be a euphemism for that might be a euphemism for God when it says Ha Elohim, right? And another possibility here is, let me just get this in context. ישלם שניים. אם לא ימצא גנב ונקרב בעל הבית אלא אלוהים, אם לא שלח ידו במלאכת רעהו. So also from the context here, so it basically it's saying that this person has to, it doesn't say explicitly he has to take an oath, but it could be implied that he has to take an oath here. And you don't take an oath to a judge, you take an oath to Elohim. So
Where does it say he takes an oath?
אם לא ימצא הגנב ונקרב בעל הבית אלוהים, אם לא שלח ידו במלאכת רעהו. Okay, so basically he has to affirm that he did not steal this property. Okay, but affirm, there's no such thing as really an affirmation in Jewish or in Tanakhic jurisprudence. There's only such a thing as an oath. We see that a number of times in cases that the person has to swear an oath that he didn't do something. So I think what it's referring to here is taking an oath, and if so, we can understand Elohim as God, and then he has to basically take an oath to God that he did not steal the stuff. I think that's an alternate understanding.
Okay. This is kind of problem.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's Elohim, and so now we can refer to Elohim in the plural. This is perfectly fine. So we can now use plural verbs and nouns to describe the God of Israel in the plurality.
I don't see where you see plural verb here.
Well, keep reading.
Okay.
Read verse 8.
All right. Then let's see. Al kol davar pesha, al shor, al hamor, al se, al salma, al kol avida asher yomar ki hu ze ad Elohim yavo davar shnehem asher yarishun Elohim yishalem shnayim lerehu. Okay.
Yoshion is actually the plural.
Right, it is.
And that's why I said here we understand that Elohim then is the judges and not God, because we don't refer to God in the plural as far as
I
the
Yeah,
verbs
but I
and
think
the
again,
noun.
it is talking about the judges, but the judges are the reason it uses Elohim is that the judges are proxies for God. So
However
clearly,
you want to
we're
say
talking
it.
about we're talking about judges here, but
Mm,
the meaning of the word Elohim, because there are different words for judges, right? There's
mm,
the word for judges is shofet. Okay, so when it says Elohim, I think the implication here is perhaps to the high court, which basically is sitting in the place where God is present. I don't see any indication that Elohim itself means judges. Elohim comes from the word Eloha, which means a god. How does that all of a sudden become judges? It doesn't make sense. So yes, it's referring to the judges, but the judges are proxies for Elohim. So that's why it uses the word Elohim.
mm. Do you have your Robert Alter with you?
I'd have to open it up. Let's see. That would be curious.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll open it up. In the meantime, you can go ahead.
Mm.
All right, let's see here. Go ahead. You can go on, and I'll open it up. It's going to take me a couple minutes. I have to open
So
up my
verse
Barnes and Noble
9.
Nook.
كي يتنقيش يرعيه خمور أو شور أو سي وخل بهمان لشمور أو مي أو نشبار أو نشبه أين
Exodus 22.
رأي.
Oh shoot! I don't know what's wrong with this thing. To stay on the inside, I guess.
So if a man gives to his neighbor an ass or an ox or a say, which is, like I said, could be a young sheep or goat or any beast to safeguard, and it dies or it is broken or it is injured, um, or actually nishbar, yeah, it could be broken or injured, or it is taken. Nishba means to be taken captive or somebody taking possession of it, and there's none who sees it. This is ain ro'eh, which means there's none looking, so there's actually no witness. Verse 10. شروعات Adonai تحي بين شنيهم. This is the oath Melech was talking about.
Yeah, Yaakov.
Mm-hmm.
So Robert Alter actually translates it as before the gods, the lowercase gods. He
Okay.
whom the gods find guilty shall pay double to his fellow man. And again, should a man give to his fellow man a donkey or an ox or sheep or any beast, so that already, first of all, that already says that he agrees with the idea that Elohim does not mean judges. But it is strange that he translates it as gods, lowercase g. But usually he has a reason for doing something. It's not always the right reason, but it's the reason. So I'm gonna see if there's a footnote here.
Yeah,
And
normally when you have Elohim used in the plural, then it's always talking about the foreign deities, false gods, the little gods.
correct, I agree with you on that. But let's
And so
see
that's
here.
why he translates it with a little g.
Yes, but it doesn't translate as judge, right? As judges. So shall approach the gods. This is what he says. Again, traditional commentators and some modern ones as well interpret Elohim as a reference to judges, though if this were the case, it would be a usage unique to the Book of the Covenant. This translation presumes this is a vestige of pre-monotheistic verbal usage preserved in this relatively archaic legal code. Here it would refer not to household gods as in 21:6, but would seem to be a loose indication of deities at a local sanctuary. It is noteworthy that when Elohim is the subject of a verb in the next verse, the verb is conjugated in the plural, as you pointed out. One should not make too much of this usage. Theologically, linguistic practice can often be more conservative than changing perceptions of reality, and it's quite conceivable that an older stratum of biblical language should have preserved the polytheistic idiom for divine presence at oracle or sanctuary without actually affirming a multiplicity of gods. And then he also agrees with here, and I did not read the Robert Alter in advance. The verb to swear, the verb is not stated in the Hebrew, but implied by the oath formula that follows. So he agrees that and affects the blah 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 milacha usually means task. Okay, but this okay. So going back to verse 8. אם לא ימצא הגנב ונקרב בעל הבית אל אלוהים אם לא שלח ידו במלאכת רעהו. So he's saying אם לא שלח ידו במלאכת רעהו is the formulation of an oath, as I was saying. And he also agrees with me that Elohim does not mean judges, that it means gods. But I would say that obviously I disagree with that. I obviously disagree with that. I don't think that this is left over for some archaic version. That's his thing. But he is basically supporting my main 2 points, that Elohim does not mean judges, and that an oath, even though it's not stated explicitly, that what's going on there is an oath is being taken. So I think that what's happening here is that the judges once again are acting as a proxy for God, and that's why they're called God. We know that the top judge, as it mentions in Deuteronomy 17:9 or 9, I always forget if it's 9:17 or 17:9. 17:9, states that the hierarchy of judges, that if the case cannot be solved in the gates, then it has to be brought to the judge that sits in what eventually became Jerusalem, in the place where my name resides, or my name is called. So I think that's the implication here, that when it uses Elohim in this case, that's talking about judges as a proxy for standing for God, just as we spoke about many times before, that when the word Yehovah is used, that often it's speaking about an angel who's standing in as a proxy for Yehovah. So I don't think there's really any indication here to say that Elohim means, the word itself, at least in the basic form, means judges. It may by proxy or by extension mean judges, but I don't think it means judges here. And clearly in verse 8 there is an oath being taken, and you don't take oaths to judges, you take oaths only to God.
Okay. Playing with my new toy right here.
Let's see if I can.
So we have to bring them to the gods and let the gods decide.
Well, again, that's it's Robert Alter. He's a biblical scholar, right? He's not a believer in Torah, and actually, you yourself said you're not either. But that's besides the point, I guess, in this case.
I said what?
Well, you said many times that you don't believe necessarily that the Torah is divine.
No. So verse 9.
Wait a second.
We just read
point.
Verse 10. We have Shavuot Adonai תחי בין שניהם אם לא שלח ידו במלאכת רעהו ולקח בעליו ולא ישלם.
I'm sorry, where are we right now?
Verse 10. So the oath of Adonai shall be between the two of them, whether or not he sent his hand against the work or the possessions of his neighbor, and the owner shall accept it, and he shall not have to repay anything.
Okay, let's just see here. כי ייתן איש אל רעהו חמור, שור, עושה וכל בהמה לשמור ומת או נשבע, אין רואה שבועת יהוה תהיה בין שניהם אם לא שלח ידו במלאכת רעהו ולקח בעליו ולא ישלם. Okay. So one thing to point out is that Melechet Rehu, here the word milacha is used. I don't know what the technical grammatical form is, but it's speaking about the basically the results of his work. In other words, his work was raising these cattle up, and now these cattle have died. So Melechet Avodah literally means the work of his fellow man, of his neighbor, but it's not referring to the work, because you can't work can't die, since work is not work is an inanimate object. So the word here is referring to, really means the results of his work, or the results of his hard work, I guess you could say, like that, the results of his work. And this is a formulation we see many times throughout the Torah. I think often with the word malechet or with the word melacha in this format, but a lot of times we will see this, that the word again means the outcome of. It's not taught. The word is referring to the outcome of something else. I'd have to think of examples offhand, which I can't think of right now. But maybe you know the technical grammatical form that it's talking about.
Okay, verse 11. وإن كنوب يكنيف معه يشلم لبعلا. However, if he indeed stole from him, then he shall repay to the owner.
Right. So this is a kind of we see this is just kind of like wisdom here, right? So they take an oath, right? And if it turns out that the guy didn't do anything wrong, then it's not his responsibility to pay, because he gave the other person to look after it. So it's not like he knew he was kind of taking a risk when he gave someone else. It's not in other words, I guess what the Torah is saying, it's not the other person's responsibility to go out of, to guard an outcome of his looking after something, right? That's if he didn't do anything wrong, then the outcome is not his responsibility, right?
So verse 12. إن ترف يتريف يبيعه عيد هتريفا لو يشلم. And so if it happens to be torn, this is normally by some wild beast or whatever, then he shall bring forth a witness, and that which is torn, the tarefa itself, shall not be repaid. He shall not
Okay.
repay.
Wait, 1 second here. One second here. ואם גנוב יגנב מאמו ישלם לבעליו, אם טרוף יטרף יביאהו עד הטרפה. No, he doesn't bring a witness. He brings the trefa as the witness. That's what it's saying.
Yeah. Okay.
He, in other words, he brings he comes. So they always use Shimon and Levi, right? So Shimon comes to Shimon is looking after Levi's sheep, and Levi comes back and says, "How are my sheep doing?" And Shimon says, we had a bad incident. 3 of your sheep were eaten by wolves. Were destroyed were slaughtered by wolves, and then Levi, I forgot which one Shimon was, just Levi, but then the other guy says to the other guy says, okay, well, show me proof. I want to see the dead bodies, so I know that you didn't just take 3 of my sheep and slaughter them and then claim that they were eaten by wolves. And so that's what it means, eid hatrefa, that he has to bring the dead bodies as proof, and therefore he doesn't have to pay.
Okay. Verse 13. וכי ישאל איש מאמרעהו ונשבר או מת בעליו אין עמו שלם ישלם.
וכי ישאל איש מאמרעהו נשבר או מת בעליו אין עמו שלם ישלם. So here we have just the opposite, right, of before. So before we had a situation where person A, again, I'll say Yaakov and Melech, so I can remember it better than Shimon and Levi. In the first case, Yaakov comes to Melech and says, Melech, would you please look after my sheep for a couple of days? And Melech says, sure, no problem. And if anything happens to the sheep, then that and Melech didn't do anything wrong. Melech didn't, put his own hand on the sheep. It just, something happened to them that was not, that was just of the course of nature. Then Melech swears that that's the case, and then that's on Yaakov. It's Yaakov's responsibility. Melech doesn't have to pay Yaakov. But in the opposite situation, it's not Yaakov that's coming to Melech and saying please look after my sheep. It's Melech coming to Yaakov and saying, may I please borrow your sheep? So if anything happens this time, now it's on Melech because he's the one who initiated the transfer, right? So basically you could sum up both of these laws and say in a sense that whoever initiated the transfer of the temporary transfer, in both cases it's temporary, right? Whether you're looking after or oops, I just pressed the wrong button here. Whether you're looking after or whether you're borrowing, that's a temporary transaction, right? So you please look after my flock of sheep for a week, or please can I borrow your flock of sheep for, I don't know why you borrow a flock of sheep. I don't know, maybe you want to paint sheep, maybe you want to do a nice oil painting of sheep or something like that. So whoever initiates the transfer of goods is the one who's responsible if anything happens. So both of these laws can basically both be thought of as one. Hello.
So verse 14, Im ba'ala immo lo yishalem, Im sachirhu ba b'sicharo.
Right. So im ba'alav imo lo yishalem. So this time the owners are with him. So let's say you're the owner of the sheep, and I say, listen, Yaakov, can I borrow your sheep for a week? I really have this desire to paint sheep. And Yaakov says, no problem, but I'm gonna come with the sheep, and I'm gonna keep an eye on them. Now, if something happens, now it's not my responsibility. Now it's your responsibility because you're there with the sheep, right? That's what it's saying there. Im sachir hu ba bischaro. So that one I'm not so sure about. Im sachir hu. If it's rented or if it's rented, hu ba bischaro. I'm not sure what that's saying exactly. I have to be honest. Maybe we'll get an English translation here. Should go to Mr. Alter. Okay. Verse 14. Is hired, he gets his hire. And should a man seduce a person? Oh, I'm already going to that. Tell a man and herder dies, and an owner not being with it, he shall surely pay. If its owner is with it, he shall not pay. If he is hired, he gets his hire. If he's hired, he gets his hire. I don't know. I'm not able to parse that one. So on to the next. I guess we'll just have to leave that law out. It's not an important one anyway. Skip that one.
So verse 15, وفي يفتي بثلا أشر له
that was a joke, by the way, but okay.
أورسا
All right.
وشخاف إما بحور يمهرن لو لإشاء. So if a man seduces a virgin, which is not engaged, Orasa means she's already been promised, I think is what that's talking about. They've been promised, or I think even if money was passed, that would still be the case, but they haven't actually consummated the marriage. This is Orasa.
Yeah, Arsa means engaged, means before the actual wedding.
Yeah.
So they're engaged. They're basically engaged to be married, but they haven't carried out an actual marriage yet.
Yeah. So if a man seduces or allures or tempts, however you want to look at that, a virgin that is not betrothed, I think is what they use.
Yeah, betrothed.
And he sleeps with her, then he shall definitely pay her bridal price and or purchase her, however you want to look at it, as a wife. Mahor is usually talking about the mahar is the price we read about later in a similar instance where the young man's going around basically sleeping around with all the virgins he finds, and in this case he has to pay the father the price of a virgin.
Well, that's exactly the situation here.
Yeah, even if the father disagrees in that, that case, the man is required to marry her. And I think in the later place it says he's not allowed to divorce her.
He's supposed to pay 50 shekels to the father, and then he's not allowed to divorce. He's not allowed to divorce her. But I think it's the same law as it's exactly the same law as here. So I think the implication is here, because we know the Torah doesn't always give the whole law. It might give it and give the whole picture in two different places. So that's exactly the same law as we have here, I believe. And so, he basically seduces a virgin, and now he's got to pay the bride price. And even if the father refuses, nonetheless, he's got to pay the bride price for a virgin, which is kind of weird, because now I don't get it. So the father gets money, and now he has a daughter who's not a virgin. So this one has always been a little bit confusing to me, and how it relates to the other one, which I don't remember chapter and verse on right now, but maybe it would be worth it to check it out. Not necessarily now, but at some point. The other thing I want to say is I had to correct this person about the word yifateh. Yifateh does not mean rape. Yifateh means seduce. In other words, like wine and dine and get the virgin into bed. There is another case where a man, it says tafas or yitfos. I can't remember if it's tafas or yitfos, but it means to grab, and grabs a married woman, or maybe it's an engaged woman, and sleeps with her. And then I think it's broken down into, if it happens in the city and she cries out, then she's and she doesn't cry out, then she's guilty. But if it happens out in the country and she doesn't cry out, then she's not guilty. But at any rate, there's no implication here of rape. It's not the word for rape. The implication here is yifateh, and this word appears many times throughout the Tanakh, and it always means to tempt. So, for instance, Deuteronomy 11:16. Let's see here. Let's bring it up. Deuteronomy 11:16. Hishamru lechem pen yifateh levachem v'sartem v'avartem Elohim acharim v'ishtachavatem lahem. Be careful lest your pen yifateh levachem, lest your hearts be tempted, or lest your heart be tempted, and you go off, you deviate from the way, and you serve other gods, and bow down to them. So yifateh is clearly, as we see many times, has nothing to do with rape. It has to do with seduction, and that's the case here. So and it's a virgin, so he's okay. You're allowed to go around and seduce virgins, but the Torah has as I've always liked to say for years, it has a "you broke it, you bought it" policy. So if you take the virginity of a girl, then you are
you're liable for damages. That's what we're talking about in this entire parasha right here.
You broke it, you bought it. Now she's
that's what we're talking about in this part right here. Right. We're talking about if you're given something to take care of and it's broken, lost, stolen, whatever, you're responsible for it. If you have a bull or whatever that goes out goring people, if you've known about it and you didn't take care of it, then you're responsible for it.
That's a good point. I like that. I like that connection. I never made that connection before. I like that. That actually makes a lot of sense. It fits right into
You're responsible for your actions, even if they are secondary. They're not direct actions.
Right.
In fact, I was saying earlier about when you build a house, it says you have to put this paraquet on the roof.
The marquet,
yeah, just in case someone might fall off, because then you're liable for that person.
Did you know in modern Israel, it's actually Israeli law that you must put a marquet around your roof?
Yeah, that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good idea. I mean, because literally it prevents death, accidental death, and you're actually liable
That's
for
right.
those damages or injuries.
Right.
Um,
It's the same as
and that's what we're talking about.
a person who kills someone by accident, without any previous malice, for malice, and has to go to a city of refuge. Same kind of death,
Yeah,
carelessness.
and that's what I was saying. That's he's still responsible for the action. He doesn't just simply go free and get the smile on the guy's face who happens to be a brother or relative of the person who died. He
Uh
actually
huh.
has to stay in a sort of prison. He's not allowed to go outside that city of refuge until the death of the high priest.
Uh huh.
Uh, you know, and after his term of penance or whatever you want to call it is up, then he's allowed to go home.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but either way, he's responsible for the death, even if it happens to be an accidental death.
That's right. I wanted to say one other thing regarding I forgot what I was going to say regarding the "you broke it, you bought it" policy, which is, yeah, I mean, a non-virgin woman is worth less in ancient Israel, and in any normal society today is worth less. Actually, even with all the feminist bullshit, a non-virgin, if you can even find one in the West anymore, they're usually already not virgins by like the age of 11 these days. But
Hmm.
maybe that's a little bit too young, but yeah, pretty young. If you go to a public high school, you're lucky if you can find a virgin girl. Unless she looks like like, I don't know, a beast or something like that. But at any rate, even those are not virgins anymore. But the point is that it just goes to show that it is expected that a woman is to be a virgin when she's married. Of course, the only excuses are, if she's widowed or if she's divorced. In that case, in both cases, maybe it's kind of out of control. It's more so if she's widowed, but you were expected to be, as is in any traditional society, including the few that exist today. You're expected to be a virgin when you get married, and if you're not, then it's really bad news. Your price goes down, and in some cases, you're considered a slut, and you're put to death
Yeah.
if you're the daughter of a Kohen.
Verse 16. Ima'in aviha titalo kesef yishkol kamuhar habatulah. And so if the father refuses to give her to him,
Right.
then he shall measure out the cost of the virgin's price. And I don't really know of a place that actually explains what the virgin price is.
It says in the Torah, 50 shekels.
Where does it say that in it?
In the other restatement of this law. I don't remember chapter verse. I think it's in Numbers. Numbers. I'd have to look it up. If you give me 1 second, I can tell you.
All right.
I'll just Google it. Man must pay 50 shekels for virgin. No, I don't want to look at. No, why do a lot of porn?
Deuteronomy
Why do a lot of
22:29.
porn sites? A lot of porn
Yep,
sites.
22:29 in Deuteronomy.
Yeah, 22:29. There we go.
Yep.
So I'll just read
The
the
man
English.
who laid with her shall give the maiden's father 50 shekels. That's right.
Right.
There we go.
So I always
ונתן האיש השוכב עמה לאביה
I always used to make
הנערה
this. I always
5
used to make
כסף.
this. I always used to make this somewhat crude joke, but I just can't resist. So 50 shekels in modern Israel is worth about
$10.
about $15 or something like that, right? Let's say
Yeah.
$15. So I used to make this joke about how you knock on the father's door. It's like yeah, I just screwed your daughter. Here's 50 shekels.
Well, look, you can actually add that to the argument with Alan. He was talking about the price, the cost of a woman,
right,
being
that's a
so
very
low.
good point.
I forgot the term he used.
Yeah. A
And
pruta, because the rabbis say pruta, yeah.
now the cost of a horse is not set in the Torah that I remember, but the cost of a virgin is.
Right. But 50 shekels of silver is a fair amount of silver. Now I have a good friend who's well known in circles, Ruvain, who makes the holy half shekel. You know about him, right?
Yeah, that's pretty expensive. How much is 50 shekels of silver? That'd be a
He
good
doesn't.
question.
So according to his calculations, which I think are based on the rabbis, I don't know if they know exactly how much a shekel weighed back then. But according to his calculations, and he is a rabbinical Jew, so he bases it on the rabbis. So it may or may not be accurate to the Torah, but I'll just use that as a kind of criterion, as kind of estimate for now. So his coins, which are half shekels, are pretty small, like maybe the size of a quarter or something like that, and they're made out of pure silver. So an ounce of silver these days is about roughly $15 to $20. Let's say $20. I don't know how many. I'm going to guess that's maybe 2 ounces, maybe 3 ounces. Let's say 2 ounces just for simple calculation. So that would mean a shekel is 4 ounces of silver. So 1 shekel would be around $80. So 50 shekels is going to be 80 times 50, which is going to be $4,000. So it's no small amount.
$4,000. I don't know. That's pretty close to being a horse's value, depending on the horse.
It has to be one hell of a horse.
So
anyway,
the point was, I
find
find it a little humorous because we were talking. There was a discussion earlier about Alan's article about how the Talmud disrespects women based on the price of the dowry.
Listen, I don't want to get I don't want to go there, but if you're going to be a Torah scholar, you better not say stupid things. Really.
Oh, I say stupid things sometimes.
So do I. But I mean, if you're going to say consistently stupid things, which are basically backing up an agenda, and as I pointed out to Alan, this is Alan Goldenthal, if you're going to attack the rabbis, you better not do it on a simplistic level, because that you're going to get attacked right back. As Karaites, we have to be sophisticated enough to understand the rabbis for what they are, and they're quite sophisticated. They're wrong, but they're sophisticated, and to oversimplify their writings is basically to open us up for attack, because then we just look like idiots, and then they come back up at us and say you didn't understand this and that and the other thing.
His heart's in the right place, but his audience is also a very simplified audience too. So
yeah, I'll say.
Anyway,
maybe I was a bit harsh on him, but I couldn't resist. I can't stand
No. I do the same. Look, I do the same thing.
Yeah,
and people do the same thing to me.
If I said something so simplistic, and especially if I call myself a Karaite Chacham, and if I say something so simplistic, I would hope somebody would call me out. Listen, I say a lot of wrong things and a lot of stupid things, and I like when people call me out, because that's the only way I learn and improve in my understanding of the Torah. But I'm not going to say, that was just unbecoming. It was just so ridiculously simplistic that it was embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, I've known Alan for as long as I've known you, and I don't remember him ever claiming to be a Hakham.
Okay, my mistake.
But
thought he did.
Ezekiel just wrote a comment. He says, you should always have a clear understanding of the position of your opponents before speaking on their view, and that's a fact.
Absolutely.
Look, a lot of people get upset about criticism, and as a Karaite, you cannot be upset about criticism. Criticism is how you learn. That's how we share our opinions, and we find out whether our opinions hold water or not.
That's right.
And if you're not willing to accept criticism, and criticism doesn't mean insult. I want to make that clear. You can be a critic and be very respectful about it.
Sure.
You don't have to be a jerk, condescending, or disrespectful. That's not what criticism means. Criticism just means to judge something on its merits. Is it right or is it wrong?
That's
And
right.
that's all that really means.
That's right.
And so when you put forth any principle, if it's wrong, be glad that someone showed you it was wrong so you know how to correct your mistake. So, that's what I want to say. And that's, Karaites were always known that way, even from the early times. One of the early Karaite chroniclers was, I can't remember his name right now. Anyway, he wrote a history of the different sects of
Call him
the
Chuck
Jews.
for the sake of argument.
Yeah, Chuck. What I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But anyway, he wrote that Karaites seemed to be very rough with each other.
Right.
And that wasn't a trait just with the Karaites, because we read in Talmudic writings that the Sadducees were the same way, that they were really rough with each other. They seemed to be really brutal in their discussion.
So were the Pharisees, for that matter.
Yeah, well, yeah. But this guy says that you can hardly find two Karaites that would agree on all things. There always is going to be a difference of agreement. And it's great. It's great to have, because without a prophet being among us, especially without the legal jurisprudence that the Torah requires us to have, it's really tough. We don't know everything. There's a lot that's been lost, even in our understanding of the words of the Torah. Man, there's a lot that's missing. It's a lot that we're just guessing at.
That's right.
And that's a result of this long exile, being separated from the history that goes back to the time that the Torah was written. So that's one good thing about having prophets. They have that connection with the divine that most people are not going to have. And but anyway, the point is, it's good to be open to criticism. Don't be combative when someone criticizes you. Like I said, doesn't mean he's being a jerk or condescending or disrespecting you. But if he's correcting you on a position and he's giving you really legitimate reasons why you're wrong, don't be combative. Accept that. Look at what he's saying, and maybe he's wrong. But it's good to have that criticism and look at it, whether you agree or disagree. That's up to you.
When I compare myself to when I was younger, and all I would do is talk, and thought I knew everything, and I realized how little I knew. Now that I know more, I realize how much now in my more mature years I just shut up and listen most of the time rather than talk. Here I'm talking because we're doing a study, but a lot of times
a discussion is meant for talking.
I'll just shut up and listen, and it's amazing how much more you learn in life when you just shut up and listen rather than talk.
Yep. Get back out of here. Anyway, so verse 17. Mechashefa lo tehayed. Those nagging housewives you shall not allow to live.
I had a friend who I had a friend who well, I don't know who you weren't back in Israel back in the day, but back in the day when Yitzhak Rabin got wiped out by Yigal Amir, his wife was Leah Rabin, and she looked like a literal witch. And so I had a friend who was a Kahanas type who finally, so Leah Rabin died. And my Kahanas friend said, "Oh, she finally, for the first time ever in her existence, she fulfilled a mitzvah in the Torah." And I said, I said, "What?" I said, "What is that?" And he said, "Lo techay machshefa," because in modern Hebrew, machshefa means a witch, like a bitch.
Yeah.
Anywho.
Yeah, so that's one of the things you're not allowed to be is a machshef.
I think we need to clarify what it, because now we're going to get the, all of these different, we have a machshifa, and we have kishuf, and we have we have oh god, the words are escaping me right now, but different, I'm sorry, minachesh and michashef and mi'onen and all these kinds of things. And I think we need clarity as to what it really is a machshifa. It's someone who does kishuf, and they translated. Okay, so here it's translated as to do sorcerer, but what does that really mean? What is a sorcerer? Witchcraft, sorcerer. I guess we know. Okay, maybe that suffices. I don't know.
Khashaf in Arabic means to disclose something, and a makash, when you say makashef, that means someone who discloses something that has been hidden. And usually, when you look at these verses talking about this sort of thing, I think it's in Deuteronomy where it starts out that you shall not consult the dead or something like that.
Lo tidrosh alametim.
Yeah, you shouldn't seek the dead, and then it starts listing all these things what you shouldn't be and shouldn't do.
Yeah, it's Deuteronomy 18:10.
Yeah, and so you think about the Witch of Endor, for instance.
Well, that was the Ov. That was an Ov with an not with an ayin, with an aleph.
That's right. Well, the Ov and the Mechashefa, that's all grouped into the same grouping, this category. And like I said, in there it starts out with you shouldn't seek the dead or something like that. Where did you say that was? Deuteronomy 18?
No, I saw him a couple minutes ago. Where? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So 18:9 says, "Ki ata ba'il ha'aretz asher Adonai Eloheicha noten lach, lo tilmad la'asot lo tilmad la'asot keto'avot hagoyim he'ehem." So when you come to the land which Adonai your God is giving to you, you shall not learn to do according to the hateful things of the nations, of these nations. Lo yimaseh becha ma'avir beno uvito ba'ish. You shall not, one who causes their son or daughter to pass through the fire shall not be found amongst you. Kosem, kosamim, this is divination, right? This is what I think it talks about in the time of Yosef, where he talked about the glass or the cup that he uses for divination or something like that. Me'onen menachesh mechashef. And so this is what we're talking about. The me'onen, those are, I want to say those are people who make predictions or something like that.
They usually, the explanation I heard is for Onain is someone who Anan is a cloud,
a meteorologist.
Yeah, meteorologist.
Meteorologists, because those are all liars.
They're about as good in predicting the weather as witches and warlocks, quite frankly. But at any rate, Onain is someone who the explanation I heard is someone who's a cloud reader who reads clouds. But they would read, like read tea leaves, read read livers, whatever that kind of stuff. Oh shoot.
Yeah. And here it says the Doresh il Hametim, or one who seeks to the dead, which is a necromancer. And the point I'm getting at is here we have all these listed above there, and then it talks about the one who seeks the dead. And
Right.
like we said, we have the oath in where Shaul went to seek this woman, and that's what she was. She was one who saw looked to the dead. And
Right.
so the
Well,
point I'm getting at is
lidrosh is a very specific thing. So lidrosh is basically to ask advice from, or to
that's right,
you know,
to seek
to
the
ask basically right. My team. That's exactly what Shaul did. That's exactly what King Saul did, right? He went to this Ov, and the Ov of Endor, and he said, and he wanted to know what's going to happen to him in battle, and so should he go out to battle, and so the Ov conjures up Shmuel, which by the way also proves that the Tanakh believes in life after death, conclusively, because in this account or story, whatever you want to call it, Samuel is conjured up from the dead, so Saul asks through this Ov, asks Shmuel if he should, what's going to be his fate in his battle against the Philistines? I don't remember now. I think the Philistines. At any rate, so this goes to show exactly what it's about. We're supposed to go to God to find this out, right? Through the Urim and Tumim, or through prophets. We're supposed to go directly to God, and you don't ask the dead for advice. Should I go to battle? Should I not go to battle? You have to ask Yehovah directly, and that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
And in that story, I love one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite lines in the Tanakh, is when Shmuel answers him and says, "Tomorrow you will be here with me." Not the kind of answer you want to hear.
Yeah. So what I was getting at was we have these group of people, and we also have Ov, which is also in here, that's covered.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end it says Wadoresh il Hametim. And we know that that's exactly what the Ov was doing. That's why he was looking for one.
Right.
And so the final clause of verse 11, Wadoresh il Hametim, could mean or any that seeks the dead, as if those listed above could be all lumped in the same, because in those days we have, even today, we got it today, even, amongst rabbinic Jews, you can pray to your dead relatives and have them do favors for you or something like that.
But
I'm
in
not
all
sure where that.
fairness,
I'm not even sure where that came from.
But in all fairness, in all fairness, that might technically not be lidrosh al hametim. I've thought about this a lot. Lidrosh is a very specific thing, and lidrosh is not even to request something; it's basically to ask advice of. Should I go to battle? Should I not go to battle? Should I, what number should I pick on the on the lottery ticket? Stuff like that. That's lidrosh. So technically speaking, I don't know. I'm still formulating my thoughts about this, but
it's like I said, it's a tough thing to really get at.
Yeah.
But today we even have the same thing. We have people who go to mediums, read your palm, tell me what my dead uncle, what happened, or whatever, So we have the same thing even today. And so you have different types of people who basically do the same sort of thing. They're contacting some otherworldly, maybe your dead relatives or whatever. to prize out something.
Sure.
And but anyways, who knows? So verse 18.
Yeah.
Here's a good one. Now, this is one that should be self-explanatory. 18. كل شخير إم بهما موت يمات.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to ask yourself, look, if we have rules in the Torah prohibiting a certain thing, then logically you can think if they have that rule, then it must have been happening. And in fact, it tells you later that these sort of things were going on. In Leviticus 18, it tells you not to do these things because that's what the Canaanites were doing, and that's why the land spit them out or vomited them out, right? So
It reminds me.
these
It reminds
rules.
me of the old. Yep. It reminds me of the old joke I always tell at Karaite meetings, and it used to crack up a particular Karaite a lot, which is why is the camel called the ship of the desert?
I'm scared to ask.
You should be, because it's full of Arab seamen.
God Almighty.
Anyway, so
that is terrible.
Yeah. But
anyway, so I think this is self-explanatory. You shouldn't be hanging out with your puppies.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I actually had a Haredi friend who found out that I used to sleep with my we used to, when I was married to my ex-wife, that sometimes we'd sleep with our dogs in the bed, and he said, "Oh, you can't do that. It says in the Torah you're not supposed to lie with animals," and I mean, I'm serious.
That's not what it's talking about. That's not what it's talking about.
But the point is that shochev, but it is as crass and irrelevant that the joke about the camel being the ship of the desert may have seemed, it actually is very relevant here, because shochev is a very specific verb which basically implies vaginal penetration is what it implies. And
not always.
Always. Yes, always. I mean, always in a sexual context. Always.
That's what
I know what you're gonna say. Right. No, obviously, if it says right.
Yeah. So when we get into this we talk about the scope in the context. It's really context dependent. You can't say every time you see shachab it means you're screwing somebody, because it's not necessarily. But in the context of sexual relation, that's exactly what it's talking about. Right. It's talking about some sort of sexual relation, and even further to get clear, it talks about the actual seminal discharge. They uses the actual. Right. I forget how they actually phrase it.
Shechvat zera.
There you go, shechvat zera. Right. And so that's talking about the sleeping with seed, which literally talks about, which literally means passing the seed while you're in bed together.
That's right. Ejaculating into, basically. So, but it's very important, because I mean, I don't want to get too graphic or anything, but if you don't perform that particular act with an animal, then technically you're not liable for death. So I mean, if you want to go, jerk off your cat or something like that, not that I want to. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't think we should dwell on this too long, because it's kind of disgusting. But if that's what you did, then you're not liable to death. I mean, it's kind of weird thing to do, unless you're really bored and you have nothing else to do with your life. But you're not liable for death. And the point is, it implies, and we could see this also where it speaks about. Is it here? No, I think it's in Leviticus 18 or 20. But we can see that where it says very specifically that also of an animal sleeps with a woman, and I think there it may actually say shechvat zera. I'd have to look it up, but
yeah, it says
talking about
yeah, she lies down with a shore.
Right.
Let me get that. Let me pull that up real quick.
So while Yaakov's doing that, the point I wanted to make is that it is a very specific sexual act, and that is vaginal penetration with an animal, or letting an animal. So in other words, a human male, vaginally penetrating an animal, or an animal vaginally penetrating a human female. So not to get too graphic, but the question is raised: what if you have anal sex with an animal? Are you liable for death or not? I don't know. I would claim yes, and I'll tell you why in a second.
I would absolutely claim yes.
You know? No, it's honestly not so clear, because bishkav implies specifically vaginal sex.
Okay, danke sehr. Yeah, I don't know.
But
that's one of those questions I hope never comes up.
But it does come up, and that's why the Torah mentions it. I mean, you'd be surprised, and then all you have to do is go on the internet and see the kind of crazy stuff they have there. Not, believe me, I'm not interested in any of that stuff. But I know it. I know of its existence, and you know, but it happens, right? So if a man penetrates an animal in the anus, is he liable for death? It's a good question. I don't know.
I don't know. Oh, I got an update. I hope this doesn't kill everything. Yeah, you know, I like to keep it simple.
Yeah.
You know, everything was supposed to reproduce after its own kind, and if you can't reproduce with it, then you shouldn't be sexually active with it either.
Then how about a woman past
menopause?
menopause?
I can't really say that, because then it comes
how
in.
about a
What
woman
about
past
your
menopause?
wife who can't have children?
Just to play devil's advocate, how about a woman after menopause?
Yeah, that's what I was about. That's what I just said. If your wife is not able to have children, then that basically says you can't have sex with her either. But
sex,
that's
sex
not.
Is not just sex is just not just about having children, right?
No.
So again,
Well, I will put it this way: if it's not possible in any way, whether or not it's the fault of the wife or not, that's one thing. But if with any woman, you could actually reproduce after your kind. So if it's not possible with that species to reproduce, then you shouldn't be sleeping with it.
Obviously, that goes without saying. I mean, you don't even have to go that far. There's just something intuitively wrong about it. But the question is more technical than anything. If someone has anal sex with an animal, are they required the death penalty? I don't know. I would claim yes.
Say yeah. I would say yes.
But no, but it's not so. It's not so cut and dried. It's not so cut and dried.
Well, that's like saying if a woman laid with an animal, but he didn't ejaculate sperm, is she liable to death?
And that's absolutely another question. That is actually another question, and I would also claim yes.
I would too.
You can claim that also with a man sleeping with a married woman, because there it also speaks about the tameh or the shkavita. So if one has sex with a married woman but doesn't, has vaginal sex but doesn't consummate, doesn't ejaculate into the woman, is he liable? Is he liable for the death penalty? I would say yes. It's obvious he is, just out of common sense. But the point is that not all these things are not all also clear.
Well, they're going to come up.
Anyway,
All right, verse 19.
Before we descend into real disgusting depravity, maybe we should just maybe we should just move on. But it's not so clear, because for the reason being that lishkav is a very specific, when speaking about sexual activity, it's a very specific action, which is vaginal penetration leading to ejaculation, and anything else is just by analogy. So it's when it speaks about a man having sex with another man, obviously it uses the word mishkav, right? But obviously a man cannot have vaginal sex with another man, so there by extension the analogy is anal sex, and that's what's punishable by death. So with an animal, is anal sex punishable by death? Certainly vaginal sex would seem to be punishable by death. Is anal sex with an animal punishable by death? I would say so, yes, because by analogy, if it's punishable by death with a man, then probably by an animal as well. Although it's not 100% clear.
Yeah.
What?
That's where we get into hikesh.
My point is, I don't want to be too disgusting. I think we should move on. But my point is that these questions are not so cut and dried.
When you actually have it, then you're going to have a lot that you're going to have to explain and why and so forth. Yeah. Oh, Melech just got booted. But anyway, when you have discussions like that, you're going to have to do a lot of explaining. It's not so easy because, and I'll tell you why it's important to be so thorough and technical, is because someone's life is possibly going to be taken,
right,
or possibly more than one life, and so you should be as thorough as you can to make sure that it's right to take that life. And so,
right,
it sounds sick to discuss it, and it's really sometimes not comfortable. But when those questions come up and you actually have to judge a case, then you should be as thorough as you can and throw out all the possibilities.
And
be sure.
Go look on the internet and see how common it is. So, and not only that, but if we're calling ourselves, because that is the role of a Chacham, so we have to be especially careful. So for myself, I would say that that vaginal or anal sex, whether it leads to ejaculation or not, with an animal is worthy of the death penalty, and any other sexual acts with an animal are quite disgusting, and a judge can certainly mete out other punishments such as lashes, but is not worthy of the death penalty. That's what I believe.
Could be.
That's
verse 19.
Yeah, hopefully more pleasant stuff.
Elohim Yehoram Bilti le'Adonai levado. So sacrificing to gods is Yehoram, sacrificing to gods is Yehoram. Yehoram actually means to be prescribed. That means it shouldn't be allowed. Bilti la'Adonai levado, except for Adonai himself.
No, this is not talking about the act. This is talking about a person who
Zovef, the one who's sacrificing.
Right, the one who sacrifices to gods, aside from Yehovah, is, and what is haram?
Not allowed.
This could mean.
Yep, and normally that's what I was about to get into. Normally,
no, it doesn't necessarily mean not allowed. It means lachrim could mean to destroy, to basically eradicate.
And that's exactly what it means.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to get at. It's not allowed. And anyone who does, in fact, we see later about the harem. Anything that's made harem, it is to be killed or burnt, depending on what it is. And an interesting thing, I forgot where it's at, but it talks about whether it's a man or a beast, it's got to be killed. And we see, and how do we know this? Is because when we see that the Israelites went in and took possession of the land of Canaan, they were to prescribe those people that
Right.
lived in those cities. And this is the same word that's used.
Right.
And so any person who sacrifices to any other god other than Adonai is to be completely destroyed, wiped out, put to death, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
And that's what it means. So it's absolutely not allowed. And
Right.
the penalty for that is to be put to death, whether that's by stoning. We see people who are stoned.
Or
We
burnt,
see
maybe.
people who are actually burnt. Huh?
Yeah. The English translation here for the, I think it's the NIV is no, it's the what is NAS? New American Standard is shall be utterly destroyed.
Yeah.
KJV, the King James Version, shall be utterly destroyed, shall be utterly other. Okay. Robert Alter says shall be put under the ban, and he doesn't give a footnote on that, so I don't know what he means by
Yeah.
that.
Well, the ban is probably he gets that from the Arabic haram. Haram in Arabic means is forbidden.
Sure.
That's banned.
Everybody knows that.
And the punishment, but it tells you later. It tells you later what
By the way,
happens to things
that's where you get the
that
word.
are.
That's where you get the English word haram, which is actually an Arabic word.
Yeah,
Right.
it's the same
The
word. That's
women
what
in
I'm
the
getting at.
harem were not,
They were
were
banned.
banned, were off limits to everyone except the
That's
king.
right, and that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
It tells you later that anybody or anything that is put in this category of harem is to be destroyed. It tells you later that that's the consequence of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, being a Christian in the land of Israel,
What's that?
being a Christian in the land of Israel is perfectly okay because they don't sacrifice to their God.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 20. وغير لو فمي ولو تلحسنوا كغيرهم هيثم بأرض مصرعين.
Mm-hmm.
And a resident or a what I don't know if you want to call them a sojourner, because sojourn is from the French, which means to reside anyway, a resident. You
Mm-hmm.
should not mistreat and you shouldn't oppress him.
All right.
Because you were residents in the land of Egypt.
All right. And a ger is a very specific thing. It's someone who basically comes from another nation to live with the people of Israel. So, like for instance, Ruth would be a ger. It's not someone who's just passing through. There are other words for that. A ger is someone who comes from another nation, and who permanently comes to live with Israel.
Yeah. Well, you have issues like when it talks about the Levite who comes to reside amongst you. It uses the participle. This is the noun, the ger.
Mm-hmm.
And so a ger does the act of gar, he resides.
Right.
And so when you talk about Levites who reside amongst you, it says Halevi Hagar Betochachem. And the Levite can also reside. And so you have to really decide in context what's being spoken of. You have residents from Ephraim and Samaria who were called Gerim, but they were also Israelites. Which
Well, sure. Everything obviously has to be taken. I mean, the Israelites are called Gerim in Egypt. That doesn't mean that that they became permanent part of the nation. So obviously, everything has to be taken in context. But in this context here, when it's speaking about Israel, then generally what it means is a person who comes and decides to basically join the nation of Israel permanently. That's why you have a ger in Exodus 12, as we saw a couple of weeks ago, a ger who may bring the Passover sacrifice, but he has to be circumcised first. Okay, if so, you wouldn't expect someone just passing through the land to circumcise himself and then bring the Passover sacrifice, right?
No, they're permanent residents.
Right.
Verse 21. Qul alamana wa yathom lo tha'anun. The widow, almanah is the widow, and the orphan you shall not tha'anun, I guess you could say oppress. You can use that too. Yeah. You can use the same word there, oppress. Im ane tha'ane otho ki im sa'uq iz'aq elai shamo'a ishma sa'aqotho. Because if you indeed oppress him or her, if they indeed cry out to me, then I will certainly hear their cry. And I want you to know that entire verse was completely emphatic. So we have certain forms, for instance, when we have with the infinitives with either the perfect or imperfect verb forms, those are always indicators of emphatic speech. And so this entire verse, you have ane ta'ane, which is the infinitive with the imperfect. Sa'uq yis'ach, infinitive with the imperfect, and shamo'a ishma, the infinitive with the imperfect. And so you have the entire verse in the emphatic voice, or I don't know if it's an emphatic voice, but it's definitely emphatic. So putting lots of emphasis on don't do it.
Right.
And the result will be verse 3. Wahara api. Nope, I missed that verse. Wahara api. Waharajti etachem becharif. Wahayu neshechem almanot uvenechem yethamim. So this is what's going to happen if you do this to these two groups of people, the widow and the orphan, if you don't think that these are protected people. Because then my anger will flare up and I will kill you with the sword. And your women shall be widows and your sons shall be orphans.
I love this verse because it just shows it's the perfect case of what the rabbis would call mida keneged mida, or what might be called in modern parlance karma. Perfect example of karma. If you oppress the widow and the orphan, then God will kill you, and your wife will be a widow, and your children will be orphans. It's the perfect.
Yeah.
What goes around comes around.
So now, when it says that he will certainly hear their cry, im ane otho, he will hear their cry if you do it.
Yeah.
What if you bless them? What if you take care of them? Will he also hear their intercession for you? And that's one of the things that we see throughout the Tanakh. God pleads with us to take care of the orphan and the widow and the ger who live among us, and the poor. The Torah is full of the rights of these people, saying, hey, you got to take care of the widow, you got to take care of the orphan, you got to take care of the ger and the poor, because they will always be in the land. And you can't mistreat these people. People who are are poor who come to work for their hire, you're not allowed to keep their money over when the sun goes down. You have to give it back. You have to pay them because it tells you there that if they cry out, if you mistreat these people, God's going to hear it, and ultimately bad things are going to happen.
Yep, you better watch.
Yeah.
Rinse and put in the blue bucket. Okay. Yep. Hello.
So, yep. I was waiting for you to come back. I kept hearing bloop, 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 bloop.
I'm back.
All right, verse 24. Im kesef talwe et ami et ha'oni et ha'ani imach lo tihye lo kanoshe lo tasimun alav neshech. So it says, if you lend out money to my people, the poor of your people, or actually, it doesn't necessarily have to mean poor. It can mean those who are in tough situations, people that are oppressed, or you shall not be as a creditor to him. Okay.
Yeah. You should not take. You shall not take. Neshech is basically a synonym for ribit.
Yeah, noshe is a creditor, and you shall not set upon him neshech, which means basically usury or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, notice, and it's the same place when it speaks about the word ribit, that it's speaking only about fellow Israelites, right? Et ami, tadve et ami.
Yeah, because you can do that. It says you can take neshek from foreigners.
Yeah, you're allowed to lend money to the goyim with interest.
Yeah.
And believe me, the Jews have become quite adept at doing that.
Yeah.
Just...
So verse 25. Im habol tahbol salmat ra'eha ad bo hashemesh tashivenu lo. So if your neighbor ra'eha, your fellow, has to give his cloak, I think is what would be Solomon's cloak, as a pledge, as a surety, I think is what it is.
Yeah, basically it means collateral.
You shall return. Yeah, you shall return it to him. You have, so it says ad bo hashemesh, which means at the
by sunset.
Yeah, by sunset. And this is why I say always that the bo hashemesh is talking about sunset. And that's the same as ba'erev and arba'im are all basically the same thing, because it uses the same word in all those places.
Yeah, I don't think there's any argument regarding bo hashemesh. That's sunset.
Yeah,
Beit hashemesh is sunrise. Bo hashemesh is sunset. And talking about that, it's almost sunset here, so we're gonna go take a walk in about a minute or two. So I'm gonna
have to go too. I'd actually said, and in fact, we can end right there, because I actually said last Shabbat or the one before that, I want to try to keep this down to about 2 hours. It's just a bit uncomfortable when it gets past 3 hours, and it's been 3 hours now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. 3 hours is a good max, but not more than 3.
Yeah, and so
2 to 3 hours.
I'll go ahead and end it there so I can go eat. But I would like to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom who's in Shabbat still, and Shavua Tov for those who are in. Oh, been so long, my Bluetooth died. But those who are in the new week, then Shavua Tov. I appreciate everyone joining us and coming and participating, all the great comments. That's all I got to say. Melech, you got anything you want to say?
Not a damn thing.
All right, so then I'll say Shabbat Shalom to everyone, and see you next week.
Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov.
Shabbat Shalom.